Hey guys, Sean here at the Gardener Center. This week I've selected another group of perennials that I'm really looking forward to telling you guys about. On my left, I have 3 perennials that you're going to want to hear about. If you are a bee-loving, butterfly-friendly, native plant, pollinator pathway kind of gardener, you'll want to hear about these guys. And on my right, I have some shade-loving perennials that maybe you're sick and tired of looking at astilbes, ferns, and hostas and want to try something different. What both groups have in common is they're really at their best in peak performance at the very end of summer, fall. I'm talking September, October. So stick around and let me tell you about these late season perennial beauties. Okay, so first up on the native plant side, I would like to talk to you guys about what I think is probably the most underused and underappreciated perennial of all of them, which is Solidago, also known as Goldenrod. One of the main reasons people tend to shy away from this plant is, for whatever reason, people associate falsely goldenrod with hay fever and seasonal allergies. This plant isn't going to make you sneeze any more than your hostas are going to make you sneeze. The plant that's making you sneeze in the fall is ragweed. Similar looking plant in its flowers, you know, they're that kind of yellow color and they bloom at the same time. This is making you sneeze. The Solidago, not so much. And the reason for that is their pollen. So the ragweed's pollen is really light and thin, and it's designed to be carried by the wind. Ragweed pollen can actually travel hundreds of miles. That's why if you don't have ragweed anywhere near you when you're sneezing, its pollen is designed to travel in the wind. Our Solidago over here, on the other hand, has a very thick, very dense, and very heavy pollen, and it is designed specifically to attract insects, and it relies on insects to carry that pollen from plant to plant. That's why you want to have the Solidago in your yard, because it is a major nectar and pollen source for your butterflies and bees and hoverflies late in the season, you know, September well into October. Some specifics on growing Solidago. Number one, you got to be in love with yellow to grow Solidago, because if you want color choices, that's your color choice. You're talking about yellow. So as far as culture goes and as far as care, sunny spot, regular to slightly damp soil, no problems with diseases or pests, flowers for about 6 weeks against September into October. This one is called Solidago ardora, or sweet goldenrod. And then this one here, so maybe you're warming up to the idea of growing goldenrods, but you don't want to jump right into the goldenrod pool and just want to maybe get your toes wet. I would go with this one right here, which is called Solidago Fireworks. Fireworks has not begun to bloom yet. This one actually blooms later. This one blooms late September into late October, actually. I like this one because Solidagos tend not to be very branchy. They tend to be very upright, and sometimes they can be a little floppy. Fireworks here gets a little, has a little more branching to it. And if you like your garden looking a little more tidy and less wild, I'd go for Solidago Fireworks. Next up on the list here is Heliopsis Burning Hearts. You may know this one as Oxeye Daisy. This one's called Burning Hearts. It actually has this really nice burgundy foliage, which I really like because, again, it's a late bloomer. So even, you know, going through May, June, July, when it's not in flower, you still have that nice purple in the foliage. So it actually mixes well and brings, you know, it brings a color to your perennial garden. It's false sunflowers, its common name, or Oxeye Daisy. I think they look a little more like zinnias to me than they do sunflowers. But again, dry to medium soil. It'll take a little bit of wetness, but full sun's critical. This guy is going to grow 3 to 4 feet tall. No trouble with pests or insects. So Oxeye Daisy, you may have grown the yellow ones before, but give this guy a try. He's really cool. Burning Hearts. And then lastly over here, these big beastly purple guys is called Veronica. This particular variety is called Southern Cross, like the Crosby, Stills and Nash song. These guys are fantastic. A couple years back, I was doing some camping in West Virginia in the end of August. And you know, at this point in my life, as far as plants go, I've seen everything once or twice, so I don't get super excited when I'm driving around looking at plants. But these guys caught my eye while I was out in the mountains, because I had seen Vernonia in gardens before and in cultivated situations, but I had actually never seen it in the wild. So I stopped my car and got out to check them out. And these guys, this was, you know, right around this time of year, maybe a couple weeks earlier, these guys were covered with insects, and I'm talking probably 20 different kinds of bees, wasps, butterflies, and moths just on one single flower head. It was like a crazy pollen party going on. It was really cool. These guys, again, essential for your late season pollinators, your monarchs. You know, a lot of your pollinators are getting ready to hibernate for the winter, or they're migrating. Great food source for the end of the season. These guys, as you can see, get big. A good trick with these guys is, if you don't want them to grow 4 to 5 feet tall, early July, usually right around the 4th of July, if your plant's 2 feet tall, cut it back in half. That's going to make for a shorter plant. It'll make it bloom a little later, maybe 2 or 3 weeks later than it normally would, but ultimately you're going to have a shorter and more compact plant. So Vernonia Southern Cross, don't let its beastly size intimidate you. It's a great plant, so please give them a try. All right, and now over here on my right, I have our 3 ShadeLoving Perennials. Shade to part, shade most of the part. One thing I would like to say that's kind of true of all the plants we're talking about today is a lot of times you don't see these plants available for sale in nurseries in April, May, and early June, when everyone's really pushing and looking for perennials, because a lot of them are just really either A, really late to break dormancy in the spring, and there's not much to look at early on in the season, or B, they break dormancy at an early time, but they're just really not much to look at in a pot early on in the season. So a lot of times you don't see these for sale in nurseries early when you're looking for perennials, so they get overlooked by a lot of gardeners. So I'm really excited to tell you guys about these 3 ShadeLoving Perennials today. Number 1 over here, which most people probably have heard of before, are the Anemones, or Windflowers. These guys are absolutely spectacular in like the late August, September, October garden. This particular variety here is called September Charm. It's a single light pink one. These guys really naturalize. You know, they're not invasive or aggressive, but they will actually, over time, they'll form quite a big colony. I like to use anemones in mass as opposed to mixed with other plants. I think they look their best that way. They want to be in a partially shaded situation. Ideally, if you all remember back when we talked about the hydrangeas earlier in the summer, in that morning sun, afternoon shade situation is best for these guys. So if they could be in full sun from sunrise to 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and then shaded the rest of the day, they'd be super happy. They like a really organic, light, humusy soil that's not allowed to dry out. They don't want to be soggy, but they don't have any kind of drought tolerance at all. So you definitely want to make sure they have adequate moisture during the heat of the summer. So anemones, this one again, September Charm. Have some nice white ones here at the store right now too. Moving on, I have another really cool one here that you may not have heard of before. This one is called Tricyrtis, or toad lily. I'm not really sure what the toad lily part's about. It might be the spots, I'm not really sure. This guy wants the same exact conditions as the anemone. It wants partial sun, it wants a soil that never dries out. It's a smaller plant. It's going to grow about 1 foot to 2 feet tall. Not something you're going to stop traffic from the road with. The flowers are very pretty, but they are very subtle and very delicate. So this guy you want to plant somewhere where you can really see it up close and appreciate the flowers. Tricyrtis hirta is this variety here, and again, also known as toad lily. And then I saved the really best for last. I think we don't get these guys in very often. Everybody knows begonias, but this is an actual zone 6 hardy begonia. So you can plant this begonia in your yard right here in Connecticut. It's going to come back every year. You don't have to build a cage around it and wrap it in burlap or do anything special. You can plant this in your garden and it'll come back year after year. I have 2 nice ones here, begonia Begonia alba, and then this one over here is called Bells and Whistles. They're both really, again, same conditions as the Tricyrtis and the Anemone. Shade to part shade, soil that does not dry out. These guys would also appreciate like a mulch in the wintertime to keep them happy. They also really are really late to emerge in the springtime. Most of your plants, if you're walking around looking at your perennial garden in the spring and it's like hi hostas, there you are with still bees, everything is going good, you might see a big empty patch of dirt where you planted your begonias. They sometimes don't appear to mid-May. So if you try these guys out, you definitely want to use plant tags or markers so that you know where they are, so you don't accidentally dig them up or plant something else where they were in the spring. This is one of those plants, if you are a gardener and you have friends that garden, especially if you have friends that garden and they come over and look at your garden, this is one of those plants you'll knock your gardening friend's socks off with. So Begonia grandis alba and Begonia grandis bells and whistles, give them a try. So thanks again, guys, for joining me again. Plenty of gardening content coming up in the following weeks, so please stick around. We'll see you next time.